Hey Kyle, you're asking really good questions about music theory. So you just asked me, let me just kind of recap the questions that you were just asking me. Um, I thought I had it pulled up. Let's see. You want to know, so the first question you asked is how would you know what the chords in the next key are if you only started with one key? So that question's a little confusing to me. How would you know what the chords in the next key are if you only started with one key? So I think what you're trying to ask is sort of like, how would you maybe get to the next key without having to memorize everything? Because one thing you can do, that's why I said that chart that I put up in that last video is kind of like when you learn multiplication tables. You can straight up just memorize it, and that's actually what I ended up doing with that exact chart that I showed in the last video, because I found the keys of C, A, G, E, D to be the most common on the guitar, and I started seeing them everywhere, and I just decided, alright, I need to know this, and I just memorized it. So I think what you're asking is how can you avoid memorizing that, and I'll show how I do it. And it's related, I think, to your other question. So then you asked, you said, talked about how your friend gave you four chords in a given key. He gave you E minor, C, D, G from the key of G major, and those are the 1, 4, 5, 6 chords. So yeah, the 1, 4, 5, 6 chords in the key of G major, you just kind of listed them wrong. It would be G, C, D, E minor. And usually, like when I learn a new key, I want to know what the 1, 4, 5, 6 chords are, because those are the chords I use the most. If I was a jazz player, I would also want to know what the 2 chord is, because the most common chord progression in jazz music is a 2, 5, 1. Whereas the chords I actually use the most for my personal taste are the 1, 4, 5, 6, because I I consider that the doo-wop progression. Other people would know what I meant by that, but so you said if your friend gave you those four chords, and now you understand what those numbers mean, I guess, from the chart I put up. So if you change that to the key of G sharp, and then you went to the key of A, then you cycle through a bunch of keys to figure out how to go from G to G sharp. So cycling through the keys, I think, is not a good way to do things on guitar. So cycling through keys is more of like a piano concept. So I'll talk about that, because I got kind of misled, I think, by that idea of cycling through keys. And I never understood why that was even a valuable way to think until I took piano lessons. I took piano lessons a couple years ago, and I learned why you would want to do that. And on piano, it's totally logical and makes sense, but on guitar, it's not helpful. So then you wanted to know about intervals. I think it's all relating to what I'm going to show you, which is how do I think, like, how do I change keys really fast when I don't actually know the chords in the key I want to go to? And it seems like a lot of the rest of your questions are related to that. So yeah, I think I have your question down. Partly I was repeating that question because I think it's good to kind of hear people. Like, I had the advantage when I was learning guitar of, like, I got hired at a music school. Like, I only played guitar for a year, and then I got hired to teach beginners at a music school. So I've pretty much been teaching guitar since I started playing guitar. But it was pretty sweet because I was around all these, like, Berkeley grads and Musicians Institute grads, and I could ask them questions. So I think sometimes hearing people that are more advanced, like, talk, like when you ask them questions and you hear them, like people who have already kind of been down some of those roads or have played music for a while, and you hear them, like, trying to process your question, that's actually, like, a good way to learn. Because right there I was trying to process your question, and you could probably see, like, some of it wasn't making sense to me and some of it was. So if you have someone who's more experienced and you can talk to them and ask them a lot of questions, it's helpful. So here's the circle of fifths. I just Googled circle of fifths because I do not use this chart. I understand it, and you could type in Google circle of fifths and you'll find charts like this. They actually have more data, more info if you find the pictures like that pop up on Google first, and they'll have like stuff going around the other direction on the inside, like F and B flat and E flat. I didn't want to write that. So what the circle of fifths is it's a way to know what the sharps are in the different scales. Because it's kind of hard to know, to just carry around all that information in your head. So the key of C major has no sharps. The key of G has F sharp. The key of D has F sharp, C sharp. The key of A has F sharp, C sharp. That's supposed to say G sharp. I kind of wrote it wrong. And then the key of E major has F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp. And C for B, F sharp, and C sharp major. I don't play with those keys. I don't know what sharps are in those keys. And I used to like try to memorize everything, and including all the flat keys. Like when I first started playing, I thought it would be good to know all that. I tried to memorize it on flashcards and stuff, and it just didn't help me. I didn't use those keys. So that data right there, I actually have that in my head. I just memorized it, and I'll show a trick in a minute of how to memorize it. But you might want to know, like, why would they put it in this format, the circle of fifths? Well, the reason why they do this is if you're playing piano, you can play like you're playing C major. So if you play piano, this is obvious to you, but if you're learning guitar, so you're playing up the piano, C major would be the white keys. So you're going up C, D, E, like I'll play it on guitar just so you can imagine it, but imagine you're going up the white keys on piano, it would be. And then you're like, alright, now I need to do the next key, like that would have one sharp in it. So then you would go up a fifth. So on guitar, the easiest way to do circle of fifths on guitar, this is not a helpful concept on guitar, I don't think at all. But if you want to understand it, you go down a note from where you started. So the next key would be. So on piano, that would be like pretty different, because when you went from C major to G, all of a sudden you would use one black key. And then when we go to the next key, if we kept cycling and we got to D major, so then there's two ways to go fifths on guitar. You can either go down one note or you can go over two, up one. So D would be right here, because I can't go down again, so I'll go up to here. There's D major. So notice I'm using the same pattern each time, I'm just moving in fifths. Well, on piano, this would be also very different, because you'd have to go two black keys. Then when I go to A major, the next fifth, there'd be three black keys. And then when I go to E, there'd be four black keys. B, five black keys. See, it's like it's a piano concept. So this chart is super awesome and essential when you're learning piano. This is how people practice piano. Like they go through the circle of fifths because it helps to learn piano. On guitar, this is not helpful. I mean, maybe people would disagree with me on that, but I didn't find it helpful at all. In fact, when I stopped worrying about that way of thinking, it became much easier. So how do I think about it? Let's say right now I want to start jamming in the key of B. Well, I don't play in the key of B very often, and the reason why is the chords in the key of B, like B. The next chord would be C sharp minor, D sharp minor. So first of all, they're all bar chords. So are any of them open chords? Well, E major, F sharp major, G sharp minor. So basically the only open chord on guitar in the key of B is E major. So that means otherwise I'm playing with bar chords the whole time. And bar chords are like kind of boring, and then I can't really utilize my open strings very much. So that's why I wouldn't play in the key of B very much. It's not that I don't like the key of B, but it's that when you're playing guitar you want to be able to use these chords. Like if you're in the key of C, you got this one, A minor, E minor, G, always open chords. There's F as a bar. But you want to use these open strings as a guitar player. I mean, most of the time. Because that's what's fun about playing guitar, is being able to hit these open strings even if you're up high, like. I mean, so many songs, like, you want to be able to use open strings or at some point in your song. So when you're confined in a key that you can't use the open strings, it can be like annoying, because then if you hit the open string, it's going to sound bad also. So the question is, though, how would I know, like, if I need to play in the key of B, because maybe one of my piano player friends wrote a song in the key of B, and I was like, well, what are the notes in the key of B? Because I don't have that memorized. Well, it's not a big deal, because what I would do is take this scale. Here's a C major scale. And if you don't know a major scale, like, you need to learn a major scale. So this one, I mean, I'll do it again if you want to memorize this one. 3, this is C, 5, 2, moving up, 3, 5, 2, 4, 5. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You can think that, or you can just memorize it. We've all heard this so many times that it's kind of in us. So just learn that basic pattern, then just move it around so that this note, instead of being C, A, B, C, is on B. You can move it here. So I'll just move it here instead. This is B, so then all you gotta do is look at the notes while you're playing and figure out what they are. So B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and B. Now, I don't have a very good memory for this kind of thing, so what I would do is write it down on a piece of paper if I really needed to start jamming in the key of B. So B, C sharp, and the longer you play guitar, you can actually start to kind of just visualize the guitar in your head. So D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp. So I would like just write this down. If my friend was like, we're gonna make this song in the key of B. I mean, first of all, I might get a capo out so that I could put a capo somewhere and use my open chords and basically be playing in the key of B. That's actually what I would do like most of the time. But if I didn't have a capo and he just wanted me to like solo in the key of B, I might do this. And the reason why I might not even do this is actually what I do more often is don't even worry about what the notes are. I'll just be like, alright, you want me to play in the key of B, so what does the song sound like? What does the song sound like? It sounds like maybe oh, it sounds really happy. Okay, so we need a major scale, so I'm going to take this major pattern, but that's too low. Alright, so I'll kind of use this major pattern right here, and I'll get started with that. And then once you kind of get going with a major pattern and a key you don't know, I'm not thinking about what the notes are right now. And once you kind of get going, it's not that bad. Like, you don't really have to know what the notes are, because it's like all your familiar patterns that you know, you just move them. They're going to be in a new spot, but they're like all the same patterns. So on guitar, like, where you kind of have the advantage of not having black and white keys, so you don't really have to learn new stuff, you just shift it around. And the other way that I tend to solo is based more on chord shapes. So if someone was in the key of B, I don't really like think in scales that much. I would be more like, alright, the first chord's B, because I could recognize this as a B major chord. And here's a D sharp minor. Okay, and then we have E, and it stays on E twice. So what I would do is, like, while the person was doing that, I'd be using my triad shapes, like little pieces of chords, and like and then E I would want. Yeah, that sounds cool. So, let's say the song was more like, let's say it was more like, it's trying to kind of get bluesier, but it wasn't too bluesy. Then I would be like, maybe like we want major pentatonic. Whoops, I moved it to the wrong one. Now I would use this basic thing to get going, and then once major pentatonic sounds happy, it's this pattern if you put the root note with your pinky and go left. Or if it's like, oh, this is sounding pretty bluesy, I would do minor pentatonic. And then once you get going, like if you start just jamming a lot, you just start to just jam. Like that, guitar players, they have this advantage where we don't have to know what we're doing. Like it's actually a huge advantage. You don't have to know what the notes are. Because on piano, you're not going to really get away with just jamming without having a pretty clear idea of what the notes are. Because you can't play piano based on shapes. So I mean, I find that guitar players have an easier time just jamming and trying stuff than a lot of piano players I meet. But piano players tend to really know like their notes and their theory like a little clearer. So anyways, so hopefully that's kind of making sense. I'm kind of just talking off the top of my head on this topic. So it's a little bit rambling, but hopefully that's a little bit clear. So let's say, so to address the other part of your question, you said like how would you go from the key of G major to G sharp? So I would not cycle through any chart like this. Like I don't even think G sharp is on that chart. I mean, maybe G sharp doesn't count as like a valid key. I would consider it a valid key because it makes sense to me. It would be all the chords in G moved over to G sharp. I mean, I never play in that key unless I had a capo on my guitar. If I had a capo on the first fret, I would be considering myself in G sharp. But let's say we wanted to switch that chord progression you gave, which was the 1, 4, 5, 6. We want to switch it to G sharp. So here would be the 1, 4, 5, 6 in G, G major. So that was G, C, D, E minor. But let's say I want to switch it to G sharp. Well, I would just go. Oh, we wanted 1, the 1 chord, 4, 5, 6. Why would I do that? Well, what I'm thinking about, and this is the really important concept, is a major scale right here. This basic major scale pattern, I'm thinking about it right here. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I don't use the 7 very often, so really this gets you by the fastest. This is the most efficient little scale. So here's the 1 chord. It's based on the first note of the major scale. It's a major chord. The next one we wanted was the 4 chord, which is always major. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we want the 5 chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we want the 6 chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So essentially what I'm thinking about is this. I'll draw the picture. And there's several of these pictures that I find are the most helpful to keep in mind. But this is the easiest one and the one I probably use the most. Because even though like you get better at guitar, better doesn't necessarily mean more complicated. I mean, really, most of the music I like is really simple. I tend to think like good songs aren't necessarily complicated. It just achieves sort of the right some sort of emotion or doing something original or doing something well. So that's the pattern I have in mind. Those are 6 notes from the major scale, and you can move these around. You can move this little major scale pattern around. Notice how I didn't use Roman numerals, because when I think about scale numbers, I think about normal numbers, but then you build the chords off those same numbers. So like the 1 chord is going to come off that first note. But you have to remember the 1 chord is major. The 1, 4, 5 are major, the 2, 3, 6 are minor. The 7 chord, which isn't shown here, but it would be easy to find it. The 7 chord would be a whole step over from the 6 chord, but it's just like the 7 chord, like you almost never want to use that. I mean, it's very rare. So, I mean, if you're in classical, I use it all the time in classical songs that I play. It comes up a lot of times as a substitution for the 5 chord. And it sounds like good in the context of classical. See the 7 over there? Over here? But I wouldn't even burden your mind with it, because it's not worth it. So I'm going to cross it out. So this is the pattern that you should learn. Those 6 notes. And then you can play in any key you want, because all you do is, let's say I wanted to play in the key of B. Well, this note is B. So you got to be able to find notes on the guitar. E, F, G, A, B. And the way that you can find notes is, remember, B, C, and E, F are the only 2 notes that are always right next to each other. Otherwise you skip. So E, F is always next to E. G, you gotta skip to it. Skip from G to A to B. So we're here now. I'm on B. Then I think about this picture, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I play that for a second. I mean, at this point I don't need to play it, but when you're first learning to it, to learn this, you probably need to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then I think, alright, the 1 chord is major, so B major. The 2 chord is always minor in every major scale. C sharp minor. The 3 chord is always minor, D sharp minor. E major is the 4 chord. F sharp major is the 5 chord. G sharp minor is the 6 chord, and then half diminished, because regular diminished doesn't sound too good, would be A sharp diminished, and then B. And then what you could do is write them down, like right there. See, I wrote down the notes. I could have just written the chords there instead. So I could just add minor, minor, minor diminished. You could even add the Roman numerals up above. And you just figure it out on your guitar and then write it down. But like, again, I wouldn't bother like with these keys. Like, I would only bother with C, A, G, E, D to start. I think a lot of guitar players would say the exact same thing. They might even say just start with the key of G or something even simpler. So see what I did? I just made them into the chords: B, C sharp minor, D sharp minor, E, F sharp, G sharp minor, A sharp diminished. But like I was saying before, I probably wouldn't even think that way. What I would do instead is either get a capo out. Let me just show this, because I think it's kind of important. Like, I'd be like, well, like, why are we gonna play in the key of B? Like, first of all, I'd be like, unless I was trying to get better at guitar and experiment in a new key. Like, the key of B is kind of fun to play in, actually, because it's weird to have the open B string be the root note. But I'd be like, alright, you really want to play in the key of B? Like, I don't really feel like it, but okay. So I'm going to put my capo right there. Now I'm going to pretend I'm in the key of A. Oh, it doesn't sound good. 1 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, 6 chord, 4 to 5 chord. Feels like I'm in the key of A, but I'm in the key of B, because I put this on 2nd fret, so this A major is that B major chord. So learning to use a capo can be huge, or you could be like, alright, I want to pretend I'm in the key of G, but actually be in the key of B. So I'm going to put it on the 5th fret. Oops, 6th fret. No, 4th fret. Because what I'm trying to do is get my G chord so that the root note of G is on B. now I could pretend I'm in the key of G, like using your example, G, C, D, E minor. So essentially what I just did was played what you were talking about, the 1, 4, 5, 6 in the key of B just by putting a capo in there. So I'm doing that progression, the 1, 4, 5, 6, but I'm actually doing it with the capo. I'm doing it with the same chords, so that's why it can be like really nice. And also I'm in the key of B right now, but I can use all the tricks I know like from this key, because every key kind of has its own tricks. Like when I'm in the key of G, I think like, or I like to use this chord or this thing on the 5 chord, or like those shapes, because in the key of C you don't really get those same tricks. Like in the key of C you get more I don't know, it's just like F is the 4 chord. It feels as the 4 chord, it feels a lot different than like C as the 4 chord. So there's a lot of these subjective tricks that you start to get, like personal stuff. Like when I'm in the key of G, I like to do also like the 1, 6 chord, going from G to E minor right there. So I really like this. That kind of stuff, you can't do that in the key of A. Like if I was in the key of A, the 6th chord is this. So that whole sort of open thing I was doing, you can't do that in the key of A. So hopefully that's kind of making sense. So one more demonstration of this. So let's say I want to play the 1, 6, to use your example, the 1, 4, 5, 6 in the key of F. Well, I think of this pattern. I put it on F. Here's an F note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then I play major. The 1 chord's always major. 4 is always major. 5, 6. And then I figure out what the chords are. F major, B flat major, C major, and D minor. And then you can write it down. Just get a piece of paper out and write it down, or if you have a good memory, just remember F, B flat, C, D minor, and then you're free to, once you know it, you can play wherever you want. You can go F up here. Then you need a B flat. And then you need a C, D minor. So you can use triads to like go wherever you want, or you could just use different shapes like F. Then we need B flat, C, D minor. So whatever you know. The more knowledge you have about like chord shapes, you can just plant them in different spots. Like this shape is movable, so like I know this note is F, so F. B flat, I could use this because I know it's part of this chord, or I'm actually thinking about this chord. Here's B flat. Next chord was C. I might as well just move that shape over. I might as well go with this easy D minor. There we go up to there. So let's say we wanted to modulate, which means change keys to F sharp major. Well, that would be really easy because I would just slide everything over. So F sharp major, B major, C sharp major, D sharp major. That feels real unfamiliar to me because I don't play in this key. So I could think F sharp major, well I need to be up higher, F sharp major, F sharp's right here. next chord was B, C sharp major, and then I needed, oops, I kind of messed up there, D sharp minor. It's kind of this exact same thing, just slid over, and then you could be like, oh, I get G major, slide over one more, the 1 chord, 4 chord, so that's G, the 4 chord, C major, D major is the 5 chord, E minor. Well, that was an obvious one. What about G sharp? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 1 chord, 4 chord, C sharp, so G sharp major, C sharp, D sharp, F minor. Or like you could name it in terms of flats, like A flat. Here's A flat major, so the key of A flat major, D flat major, E flat major, F minor. That feels real weird to me, to think that way. I just don't play in that key a lot. I started taking jazz guitar lessons, and I was actually having to learn these other keys, because a lot of jazz songs do make use of the 12 keys, and they modulate between them, and there's reasons to know them. Like, jazz will a lot of times sort of do 2-5-1s of keys within keys, like anticipating the next key. So I mean, you can get into that stuff, and it's like necessary to know that. And you can't really get by. Like you can get by with just knowing shapes, but it starts to become a real headache if you don't know the notes and scales. So I mean, again, there's an example of like when you have a need for it, you start to learn it. So like when I was taking jazz lessons for a few months recently, I was like really activating all that knowledge, like, and forcing myself to practice like what is A flat major, going from A flat major to E flat major scale, like doing stuff like that, like exercises. But that's because I was trying to learn some jazz songs. But I don't really actually like listening to jazz that much, so like I drive around listening to like Joy Division or Wu-Tang Clan, or maybe like some new music like that I hear about, or maybe like Kraftwerk or something. So like the music I listen to, like it's not really motivating me to go learn stuff. And then almost all the songs I teach, you know, like Foo Fighters and Red Hot Chili Peppers and all that, you don't need to know anything beyond the keys of C, A, G, E, D, and like Red Hot Chili Peppers do add some kind of unusual chords in there, but it's not like you need to know anything too fancy to understand that. So hopefully I just rambled a ton, but this is the kind of stuff I had the advantage when I was learning of hearing people kind of talk like this. There's the picture that I use. You can move this around to find the root notes for the chords, and you can just like move this little picture around wherever you want. On the bottom 2 strings, it does get trickier if you want to. Don't use that picture like up on these 2 strings. There's another picture I could give later. I think it's not worth giving right now. Like there's a few other things I use, like right now I'm going to play in the key E, and I'm going to start here. So basically what I did is I did another sort of simple pattern, but I wouldn't worry about that until you can really internalize this. So once that's easy, or you have questions about this, it doesn't make sense, try to work those out, and then I'll do something more about that other pattern. But the last thing I would say, like the guitar is just an awesome instrument because it's so easy just to make up cool stuff without knowing what you're doing. So like, I think that's a good advantage actually. Like, I just think it's a fun instrument to be like, ooh, that sounds kind of exotic. like, what could I do to get to a new chord? Well, like, sounding too creepy. No, I don't like that. So like that sounds stupid, that last chord, but it's just so fun just to like I've never done this before. Like added F sharp to this. I've done this a lot. I've actually never done that before. So it's just a fun instrument to be like. Maybe I could do something with that note. So that's kind of cool. I want to get to this note. Maybe to this shade. No. So I like that. This is weird. That's too jazzy and weird. I mean lame sounding. I don't like want this note. So then you just kind of tinker around until you find what you're looking for. For some reason that would sound kind of weird. Ooh. I like this. I like this, but it's too bright. Maybe just make it into a 7 chord. So I got this weird chord I've never seen. And then so, right now I'm not thinking anything. I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just taking a shape I know and then trying, ooh, this sounds cool. F sharp. This chord I liked it because I was kind of feeling that dissonance, and then get up to like a more like resolved to E. I'm not satisfied with that, so I just keep hacking around. So that's like outside of this type of thinking altogether, but then you can start to kind of pull it into this kind of thinking later if you need to. Sort of more like theory thinking. So I hope that was helpful. That was a lot of rambling, but I don't know. I think it's cool that you're asking these kind of questions. I'm sure a lot of other people have these kind of questions. And I've had a few really motivated students who wanted to learn this kind of stuff. And it's fun when you're a guitar teacher and like people actually want to know about theory. They're asking questions like this. So that's why I talked for almost 40 minutes. So, alright, hope this was helpful. Okay, bye.